Hello friends, the energy markets or the fossil fuel markets are the most difficult markets to trade. But if you get them right, there's nothing that can yield as much return on investments or profits as these fossil fuel markets. And yet, it's not without a reason that oil and particularly natural gas are called widowmaker markets, because you get them wrong, you're dead. And these are typically feast and funeral markets. So I'm going to tell you about what is happening in the markets, how they are changing, and how the big boys of the market, that is Saudi Arabia, is transforming the game. Before I begin, I would like to clarify that this video is made by me in my capacity as a pure oil trader and from the financial markets point of view. This is not about religion. This is not about politics. This is not about any personal biases whatsoever. Viewers are requested to keep their religious comments to themselves while they are interacting with me on this YouTube video. Most of you would have seen in the news media recently Saudi Arabia holding a swimsuit contest. Now, a couple of years ago, this would have been completely unheard of, unimaginable, and almost blasphemous. And yet, here is Saudi Arabia doing something that most of the Arab world would not have dared to dream about. Why is it happening? What is it happening for? And what can you do to profit from what is happening? Now, I follow what is known as the 360-degree worldview of financial markets. I tend to look at aspects that are ignored by the broader segment of the markets. Now, to understand what's happening in the oil and gas markets, I would request you to connect with me on my free Telegram channel. That's one place where I share all my thoughts. And to briefly encapsulate what I have been saying so far on my Telegram channel, that all these oil exporting and gas exporting countries have no way out but to sell oil and gas at whatever prices the markets are giving them, because most of these countries, especially the Middle East, North African countries, have nothing else to sell. They can't sell sand, they can't sell dates in large enough quantities to garner any serious money, that is. So fossil fuels are all that they have to sell, and sell they will at whatever the price. Why? And what is happening? It's all about that in this video. So let's take a chronology of what's happening. In 2010-2011, you saw the Arab Spring. Now, this was about serious discontent in the Arab world when the Shias and the Sunnis clashed, where civilians clashed with their governments or with their rulers and demanded better way of life. You all remember the Qaboos riots in Egypt. We all remember what happened in Tahrir Square, and if not, you can Google search the same. Now, the second aspect that I think has triggered the butterfly effect. What is the butterfly effect in behavioral finance? I have made a video, the link to which is in the description below this video as well as in the pinned comment below this video. You can please study what the butterfly effect is. Butterfly effect is when the wings, the flapping of the wings of a butterfly, which are supposed to be harmless, can cause a big storm in financial markets. So small events can basically trigger off very large catastrophic events. Now, typically, the second event that I classify as a butterfly effect was the beheading of Ayatollah Sheikh Bakir al-Nimr. He was a Shia cleric residing in Saudi Arabia, and he was executed on 2nd of January 2016. Now, the Saudi Arabian society is primarily Sunni Wahhabi in where the majority is concerned, with Shias constituting a minority. Typically speaking, the Shias were feeling basically subdued because they are in the minority, and Sheikh Nimr al-Nimr was an outspoken critic of the Saudi government. So he was beheaded. Now that started fomenting some anger within the Shia community. And so what really happened was a small town in eastern Saudi Arabia called Awamiyah, with a population of approximately 30,000 inhabitants, staged a revolt, and they started firing weapons and rocket-propelled grenades, anti-tank weapons, etc., at the Saudi army that had encircled that village. The Saudi army was surprised as to how they got this much firepower in through the security cordon. But this siege lasted for many, many weeks. It rattled the Saudi government. After the Arab Spring itself, the Saudi authorities had started stepping up social welfare spending, which is typically giving money to unemployed youths, giving them encouragement to go out there and start some enterprise, something or the other. Basically giving them a better way of life, so they did not protest. They did not want an Arab Spring on their land. All right. Now, go to point number 4. In October of 2017, King Salman of Saudi Arabia flew down with a fleet of jumbo jets, Boeing 747s, and landed in Moscow. I remember I was in a television studio when the old and frail king was coming down his aircraft in a gold escalator, and the escalator malfunctioned. There was a little bit of a pandemonium. The king had to be helped. They tried to get the escalator working again. There was a slight delay, and I could basically see giggles and remarks from other guests and other staff members in that studio where I was doing a show. In my humble opinion, they were missing the entire point. Why was a frail and very, very obvious unwell king flying down with an entire retinue of doctors, cooks, physiotherapists, advisors, and military attaches at that age to Moscow, which wasn't even their strong ally? The Saudis were very thick buddies with the US. So King Salman landing at Moscow itself caused a flutter in the geopolitical world. And that obviously means the oil traders' world. Now here was the birth of OPEC Plus. Here was the entry that Russia got in the OPEC cartel as a non-regular member. Now we knew at that point in time that oil prices would be rigged up. This is no coincidence that a frail king was flying into Moscow without rhyme nor reason. Now the Saudi Aramco, which is the oil company of Saudi Arabia, IPO was announced to be in the works, and the original ticket size was between $200 to $300 billion. Prince Mohammed bin Salman, who actually runs the country behind the throne, made it very clear that this would be a gigantic, once-in-a-lifetime kind of an IPO, and it would be the biggest in the world. As time progressed, they realized that the international community did not have an appetite for $300 billion. So it started getting toned down. Now, the sixth point in the chronology of events, Saudi princes were arrested and they were interned at the Ritz-Carlton in Riyadh for months. Now, high-profile princes like Al-Walid bin Talal were also in that hotel interned. Now, Prince Mohammed bin Salman wanted to basically purge the palace of various charges that he leveled against these princes. But the idea was that the Saudi Aramco IPO had to be subscribed, even if it meant coercing these princes to basically contribute to it. So this was another event, and this occurred basically in 2017-18 itself. Now, as international acceptance of Aramco basically started facing resistance, primarily coming from France and England, etc., the IPO size started going down. Now, if the IPO size is to be toned down, don't you think that at that level, at that size of the IPO, there would be plan B? So, plan B was SABIC, Saudi Arabian Basic Industries Corporation. It's a subsidiary of Aramco. And to the best of my knowledge, from what I know about trading oil, and I have been one of the earliest traders of commodities in this country, my book is still the first officially accepted guidebook on commodities, sponsored by the NCDX and empaneled as a referral guide for SYPCom by the Mumbai University. So, Aramco's subsidiary SABIC is in the business of making derivative products from petrochemicals, plastics, polymers, paints, adhesives, etc., etc. So SABIC basically was created with the idea of flooding the world with cheap plastics, competing with China, and deriving whatever value there could be from the residual petrochemical molecules that were left after refining crude oil. This would be the value add, which would add additional profits to Saudi Aramco. Now, Saudi Aramco as a company is actually owned by the Saudi palace. And the Saudi palace levied a tax of 75% on the profits of Aramco. This made the royal family very, very rich. But before the IPO, they wanted to increase the profitability of Saudi Aramco. So, tax structure was brought down from 75% to 50%. And there were a few other changes made. Expatriate salaries of people not residents of Saudi Arabia, but they were foreigners working in Saudi Arabia, particularly Aramco, they were slashed by 20%. And now starts the interesting part. The Saudis, for the first time, started taking some very, very bold steps, something that traders like me sat up and took notice. They basically changed from the Sharia-based lunar calendar to the Western Gregorian calendar. Now, to those who are uninitiated, they would basically not understand what just happened. Now, in the Sharia lunar-based calendar, there are 13 months. In the Gregorian calendar, there are 12 months. So after slashing salaries by 20%, you start paying salaries 12 times in a year rather than 13 times in a year. Huge savings. So Aramco's profits went up further. But this was coming at a political risk. Saudi Arabia is a very, very conservative Sunni Wahhabi Islamic country where the clergy has a lot of say. Shifting from Sharia-based calendar to the Gregorian calendar wasn't easy. Point number 10, the major reforms continued under Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Saudi women were allowed to drive. This was something that wasn't heard of before. Why? Because the Western companies could come out and sell more cars. And society was being opened up in Saudi Arabia in preparation for Vision 2030, which was Prince Mohammed bin Salman's pet project. Now, not only could Saudi Arabian women go out and drive, they could also wear Western attire rather than the typical Arabic attire that covered them from head to toe. Now, this was again a very major change. Movie theaters were allowed and they were banned under Sharia earlier. Now, Saudi women can watch sports. They can go to stadiums and watch sports with men, which again was something that was unheard of. This had a huge risk of angering the clerics, and some of them did express discontent. But I'm coming to oil trading. I'm just preparing for what's happening ahead. Now, Vision 2030 of Prince Mohammed bin Salman is very clear. He reads the writing on the wall and he knows that oil as an asset, as a revenue source, has a limited shelf life now. He has to open up the Saudi society and the Saudi nation to foreign capital, to trade and commerce, and to tourism. Tourism, main focus. So, a big city is being constructed in the desert called Neom. What will it have? It will have stadiums, it will have amusement parks, it will have pubs, it will have movie theaters. It will have everything that was unheard, unthought of barely 2 to 3 or maybe even 5 years ago in Saudi Arabia by the conservative society. The idea is to attract tourists, and many Western countries, including Germany, have agreed to participate financially in the development of Neom. Where is the money going to come from Saudi Arabia? Obviously, hey, oil and gas. That's what the Saudis have in abundance. So I'm building up to what is happening and why the Saudis are influencing the oil market so much. Now, if you've noticed something, the Saudis are warming up to diplomacy with Israel. Now, that's unheard of. An Arab and a Jew coming together and sitting on the table and having tea and coffee together, unheard of. But it's happening. Did you think 5 years ago that the Israelis would have a diplomatic mission in the United Arab Emirates? I didn't. Although I was watching Jared Kushner going out to and fro between Saudi Arabia and the US during erstwhile President Donald Trump's tenure, I was sitting up and taking notice with one eye open and saying, hey, let's watch what's happening. But there were no indications that things would happen so fast, and yet they did. Now the Saudis are rapidly evolving to change with a fast-moving world. Like I told you, the losses of Saudi Aramco by selling crude oil cheap would be more than made up by the profits of SABIC. So the Saudis are now creating a new liberal order and they are aligning with the West. What does it mean for you as an oil trader? It very simply means that the Saudis are willing to negotiate well with the Western buyers. They would rather keep their market share in the oil and gas sweepstakes rather than look at revenues alone, because they know the future is in diversification. Aramco's IPO was launched in end of 2019, but it was a far cry from the $250 to $300 billion IPO that was planned by Prince Mohammed bin Salman. The IPO size was actually whittled down to a paltry, relatively speaking, of course, $25 billion. And after exercising the green shoe option, where the issuer is allowed to retain a certain amount of extra shares, it was totaling $29.4 billion. Now the Saudis very clearly need a lot more money. Building a city in the sands is not going to suffice with only $29 billion. Besides, the Saudis need money to maintain, upgrade, and create better infrastructure for the oil and gas fields themselves. That's not to talk about retiring or repaying old debt by way of bonds that were issued earlier and are now due for redemption. And then came COVID in 2020. The Saudis stepped up their social welfare spending. They don't want any friction between the Shias and the Sunnis. Money ran out of the Aramco IPO proceeds. Either they come out with a follow-on public offer of Aramco, which there are rumors about in the market, or my gut feeling is SABIC will come out with a standalone IPO of its own self. SABIC is Saudi Arabian Basic Industries Corporation. Now do remember, it's a company that will flood polymers, plastics, etc. at low cost into the world, taking head-on-head competition with China. Point number 15. The Saudis are entering the natural gas export world in all seriousness. If you've read my posts on my Telegram channel, I've repeatedly said the Saudis are making serious investments at developing the Jafurah gas field. Talks are on to basically ramp it up into production as early as 2025 and scale up the output even at the expense of 108 billion US dollars as developmental expenses. Now they've also the Saudis have also gone ahead and bought a gas company, and this is their foray to take countries like Qatar and United Arab Emirates and Iran head on by exporting gas. So far the Saudis have been focusing on oil, now they're also getting into gas. You understand why a swimsuit competition was held in Saudi Arabia. This was not something that you would have imagined earlier. The Saudis are very clearly sending a message out to the world, hey, we are no more focusing on oil, we are also looking at other sources of revenue, so please come and set up shop in Saudi Arabia. What does that tell you as a trader? To me, it tells me here is a soft target, here is a country that is willing to sell oil even at a discount if I give them a contract for long enough tenures. This is what I expect, and this is what I have been telling you as an oil trader. Now, the Saudis have been cutting output. They have been leading the way with what they call voluntary output cuts. Why are they cutting output if they want to sell more oil? The idea is to rig up the price of oil. I'm using the word rig up without any reservations. The idea was to ramp up the price of oil so that either Saudi Aramco's follow-on public offer or FPO could be pushed through, or the IPO of SABIC can be pushed through. Also, like I wrote on 10th of December 2023 on my free Telegram channel, Putin wanted to play Santa Claus with oil and gas traders and ramp up the price of oil and gas ahead of general elections that were held in Russia in March and went on all the way up to April. And sure enough, my hypothesis was bang on target and oil and gas prices were pushed up. Will output cuts last? I don't think so. Once your follow-on public offer of Aramco or IPO of SABIC is done and dusted, output cuts will disappear. And here's one more thing which the media and the research industry unfortunately are not able to tell you. I don't blame them. They are not traders. You see, there is a big parallel market in oil and somewhat in gas, but primarily in oil. What really happens? Shadow inventories which are never declared by drilling around the clock, are transported by ghost ships. Ships which have no country flag, ships who basically have been delisted from the rosters because they are old rusting buckets. They don't have GPS satellite transponders, they don't have markings, they don't have country flags, they don't have insurance, they are not registered in any country's rolls. And they have a crew with no nationality and no passports. And these ships transport the shadow inventory and deliver in the high seas where no nation's jurisdiction applies. No one can really show you conclusive proof as to how much oil which country is selling in the parallel or the ghost market. But it's an open secret. You need human intelligence, boots on the ground, a big network of fellow traders who trade oil and gas as seriously as you do to tell you what's happening. Obviously, one cannot name sources, names, locations, etc. But it's now coming out in the open. Leading news websites like Reuters and Bloomberg are now very openly admitting that a shadow market exists and it's growing by leaps and bounds in the international oil and gas trade. So, do output cuts really matter to somebody like me? No, it doesn't. That is just official data. In the real world, a lot of things happen in the parallel market. Which is why you and me as real world traders need to monitor everything. Everything and everything that impacts the price must be taken into account. We can't leave things to an element of chance. It's our own money. So now, what's a call of action? What do you do? Now, presently, I'll talk about myself. Now, presently, I have no open trades in gas or oil. But I'm bearish on both. I'm looking for suitable price points to go short at the right price point and at the right time when I feel not just the price but the time is right on the price time continuum. I would not mind going short in the linear futures segment. I might just finance part of those trades in the non-linear options segment by way of theta decay. But as of now, like I said, I'm waiting and watching and keeping the powder dry, which means sitting on cash. As soon as data points emerge that time is right, I will jump in. And yes, as usual, I'll post it on my social media channels, particularly starting from my Telegram channel. But this is not going to be a trade where day traders can make too much money. This is going to be a long drawn out trade. It's going to be who blinks first between the oil exporters and the oil traders. Yes, the markets are going to see the oil traders come toe to toe, face to face, head to head with the oil exporters to call their bluff. Only the very serious, only the very savvy guys will win. May the best traders win. Let's stay ahead of the markets with a 360-degree worldview. That's what we are all about, using a 360-degree worldview to stay ahead. Friends, before I wind up this video, please subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't already done so. Click on the bell icon to receive instant alerts about fresh videos being put up out here. In the comment segment, do let me know what you think about my work and how it helps you become better traders. Also, please share my video with family and friends and social media groups, etc. like yourselves, smart guys, so that I can reach out to a wider audience here. Thank you for your patience and being with me in this video. Till we meet again, this is Vijay Bhambwani signing off for now. Have a profitable day ahead. Bye-bye.